Well, why don't we do this? Let's get started, and I know more people are going to be joining. Once again, I would like to introduce myself. My name is David Silberman. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Clinical Research Fastrack. And Clinical Research Fastrack is an organization that prepares people to enter the field of clinical research. And this is an exciting and growing industry. And we've had so much interest that we wanted to put on a webinar and answer many of your questions. So today we're going to be talking about 70,000 open clinical research jobs. Where's mine? And the reason why we have that title, Where's Mine, is because most of you don't really care about 70,000 jobs. You just want one. And you want that one great job that's rewarding, fulfilling, that pays well, that you can wake up every morning and be passionate about. So that's what we're going to talk about today. With me today are two amazing people that I have so much respect for, and I have the great honor of working with on a daily basis. We have Jeannie Farnsworth. Jeannie, why don't you raise your hand? Hi, Jeannie.
Hi.
Jeannie has been in the clinical research industry for 18 years. And I hired her the way many people are hired in this industry because she was recommended to me. She was introduced to me by some of my colleagues. She came and taught some of our programs. And when we were looking for another great instructor leader for our company, Jeannie rose to the top. And the funny thing is, I never really looked at her resume. After I hired Jeannie, I realized 18 years in clinical research experience. She's a graduate of the Harvard Clinical Research Program, is that right? And she's worked in several states. Jeannie, can you give just a 2-minute background on your experience in clinical research?
I got my start in cancer research at the Huntsman Cancer Institute in Salt Lake City. And I wanted to get out of cancer research because I wanted to do something different. So I went into endocrinology, diabetes, and growth hormone research. And when there was a position open for pediatrics, I went there because I really like kids. And then I followed a private physician who wanted to go into private practice. And I had just got married and was pregnant, and he allowed me the autonomy to work from home. And from there, I started my own research company and helped him and 7 other endocrinologists with their business development, with their training of their staff and protocols, and making sure that their quality of their research was up to par, helping them with data management. And so I got to do that for 10 out of my 18 years. I've also been a monitor, or a CRA, which you'll learn what that is later. And so my experience has been really great, mostly at the site level. I really like working with the patients. For me, that is a very fulfilling role. When you build these relationships with people, you realize what an impact you can be making with these people, especially when they're kids. You see huge changes.
Wow. Well, welcome, Jeannie. It's such a pleasure to have you from Scottsdale, Arizona, Tempe, where you are now. And then I also have another colleague of mine, Lauren Belina Chang. And Lauren has been with our company from the very beginning. She taught our very first class, and she's our national program director. She's currently working and living in Atlanta, Georgia. She's going to be running a program in Philadelphia coming up on Sunday, which is very exciting. Simultaneously, Jeannie's going to be running a program in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I'm really excited to welcome Lauren. Lauren, why don't you give a really brief introduction about who you are, your background, and your knowledge of clinical research?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been in research for about 12 years now, and is this where I ever thought I'd end up? No, but I'm really, really excited to be here because I am one of those people who fell into clinical research. And I got my start in basic science, and I thought, wow, I've done all this research with rats. I can certainly do it with people. It turns out that people are not rats. I had to really relearn from scratch what I was doing, and I didn't have any sort of formal training. I had to really go through the early stages of my career and really find mentors and people to really help me to do my job, even though that wasn't their job to help me do my job. I got my start in North Carolina doing research and was there for several years, studying pain and psychological outcomes after trauma. We were looking at ways to intervene when people have really traumatic events to help them have a better trajectory, a better recovery, a faster recovery. Most recently, before joining Fastrack full-time, I was out at the Mayo Clinic in Arizona in the cancer department there running trials, and I really found my passion in helping to bring a new generation of clinical researchers into this world because we so desperately need them. So I am very excited to be here tonight. Like David said, I am in Atlanta. I recently relocated here because there's so much going on the East Coast. I'm going to be in Philadelphia tomorrow. I was just in Florida. I was in Raleigh recently, and there's so much going on. We are really on the cutting edge of all that is to come. So I'm really excited to be with you all tonight. Thank you all for joining us, and kick it back to David.
All right, thank you, Lauren. Just to kick things off, I wanted to actually do a quick poll and learn a little bit about our audience. So I'm going to send out this poll, and I just wanted you to answer what field you're working in right now, and you should be able to see the poll on your screen, whether you're in healthcare science, maybe psychology, maybe business. We have people that we work with from all walks of life. And the interesting thing about clinical research is it's a large global industry. There's a lot of different opportunities, and you don't have to be a medical assistant or a scientist or a microbiologist. You can be, but you could also come from business and retail, marketing, different places. So what I'm seeing is we have people that are from all different walks of life, which is really, really interesting. Okay, and I'm just going to, it looks like about 35% of our poll is from healthcare, which is really great. We have some scientists in the mix, and then we have some people in psychology, business, and then a lot of other interests as well. That's super exciting. All right, so to kick things off, Jeannie, I wanted to ask you, what is clinical research? Because we talk about 70,000 jobs in clinical research, and what we've found is people are applying to these jobs and they may not know exactly what they're applying to. Can you, in a nutshell, tell us what is clinical research?
In a nutshell, so clinical research is a very niche sector or a niche market of the healthcare sector. And it's the opportunity to work on a medicine, a medication, a treatment, stem cell, genetic therapy, a device, something that is going to help someone. Usually it's an intervention. And it is a part of the market where we all know that you get this medicine and it makes you feel better, it helps you, but it had to be tested. It had to be approved, and it has to have sound numbers. And so it has to be aggregated data to be collected for common knowledge. And so it is a very niche market where you're working with patients and collecting data for a common good and a common knowledge to see that if it's safe and if it's effective, and therefore if the FDA will approve it.
All right, so you said approved by the FDA. Lauren, can you expand on that? Like she talked about treatments that have to be approved. Can you give a little bit more detail on what is clinical research?
Yeah, so we have these standardized protocols that we need to run to test these new drugs, devices, new treatments, whatever they may be, because just like Jeannie said, we need to make sure, number one, that they are safe, right? We can't give something that's not safe to people. Our second question is it effective? Does it work, right? Because if it doesn't work, again, we shouldn't give it to people. There's no point in that. So the whole goal of clinical research is to collect all of this data from a diverse patient population who chooses to take part in our clinical trials. So we collect this data. Eventually that data goes to the FDA, and the FDA evaluates it and says, yes, is it safe? Is it effective? If the answer is yes to both of those questions, then they can approve it. And that's why we can go to our medicine cabinets or go to our doctors today and have these treatments that take away our headaches or our aches or pains, or even potentially save our lives, because these clinical trials have happened before. That data has been collected in a very sound manner by people who know what they're doing. And then that information can go to the FDA, and the FDA can make a really informed decision about the approval.
Okay, so the FDA is the Food and Drug Administration, and you're talking about clinical trials this doesn't have to do with our food, really, does it? Or because there's all kinds of research. There's bench researchers, there's psychology researchers, clinical research. Like, Jeannie, you said it was a niche market. When we say niche, what is that niche? Is it?
It's a specialized area of healthcare. So it involves the clinic with patients and physicians and healthcare providers. And so as a clinical research coordinator, typically you will work with someone who's called an investigator, principal investigator, sub-investigator, and you're executing this protocol, which is kind of this document that shows all the procedures that need to take place to prove safety, to prove efficacy, to work with these patients, because they're doing us a favor by being on this clinical trial, but we're also hoping to, like I said, aggregate this data. So it's like working in a medical setting, but it's a lot more strict in that it's very detail oriented. There's a lot of technology involved, which I kind of like as well, because you're on cutting edge medicine, you're on cutting edge technology. You work with teams of people at the site level, including the patient. You're working with teams of people at the sponsor and CRO level. I hope
And you know, yeah, and that's great. And Jeannie, you know what's interesting? I think one of the defining factors too is that we're using experimental drugs and devices in people. And that's really the defining factor. We're not in the labs anymore. We're not testing on animals. We're working with patients. And I think both of you spoke about that. Clinical research is testing these investigational products with patients. And it's a growing field. Lauren, why is it growing so fast?
Yeah, it's been growing by leaps and bounds. Even just in the last few years, we see all these advances in technology. We see a lot of funding in the private sector, in the pharmaceutical sector, where people are just investing more and more. And I think a lot of that does have to do with technology. And I think a lot of it has to do with us understanding more about human beings. We're seeing a lot in the field of genetics right now, in epigenetics and stem cell therapy. That's causing a huge growth in what we can do by really testing these new therapies, which are really groundbreaking. And Jeannie, I think, did you have more to say on that too? Because you were talking about the CARE Act earlier, right?
Yeah, so Barack Obama in 2016 passed the 21st Century Cures Act, and that really set the precedence for the private sector to follow suit. So basically that act said that more clinical trials need to come to market faster because there's been such a delay. As you can imagine, I've been in it for such a long time. I've seen clinical trials where they were supposed to be 3 years running and it ended up being 5. And why? Because of people who are untrained and they don't know how to run a clinical trial properly. And so it's been frustrating for someone like me because I feel like I'm constantly training people on the same materials. And so a lot of people have interpreted this act in several ways. A lot of people have seen it in the way of education and training. Some of it see it in technology. Some of them just open up more positions so that they have a higher rate of success using statistics. And so I think that 21st Century Cures Act is pretty key to why 2017 brought in so many clinical trials. There are 46 drugs that were approved in 2017 alone. It's only October, and I recently checked, and there's already 43. And
wow.
Another 10. So.
Wow. So you can see on this chart that every year, these are registered trials, and the number of registered trials keep going up. This has over 260,000 registered trials in clinical research. And the global pharmaceutical industry is a $1 trillion industry. The investment right now is huge. And with that investment, there's more and more jobs. I know when we publicized this webinar, we said 70,000 jobs. I just looked, and that number has gone up in the past week. It's now over 75,000 jobs. Why are they not being filled, Lauren? There's so many jobs. Why can't everyone who's on this webinar right now just apply and get those jobs?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, everyone who's in this field is really protective of it because we are doing such important work. Like everyone's already said tonight, we are testing what's to come. We are always working in the future. in this field. And as such, we are offering our patients something that they cannot get outside of a clinical trial. So rightfully so, we're all really scared and really protective of the field, and we really want to just hire people who know what they're doing, right? But the problem is, how do we get more people who know what they're doing? And really, there's a shortage of people who are trained in the field. Whenever we get in a stack of resumes for a CRC position, the coordinator position at that site level, we look around and we say, I guess we're gonna have to steal someone who's already working in the field from somewhere else and leave them in a lurch at that other facility because we can't find anyone who's trained. We don't know anyone who knows ICH GCP 6R2. We don't know anyone who can document according to Alcoa C.
So great point. So the people out there just don't have the right training. They're not trained in clinical research. So Jeannie, if you're a nurse, if you're a healthcare worker, like many of the people on this webinar right now, or say you're a bench worker, you're a scientist, you have a master's in molecular biology, is that enough? Is that gonna get you the job?
It's not enough. It's a great starting place. Because like Lauren was saying, it is such a protected field. That's why it's so highly regulated. That's why there's so many regulations in the US. That's why there's so many guidelines around the world to streamline the processes so that globally we can run these clinical trials or these protocols safely for people all over the world. And so there's so many unfilled because there's not enough people who are trained. It's great to have those skill sets, but you have to know ICH GCP E6R2. You need to know FDA regulations, especially if you're in the US. You have to understand the protocols and how they affect these people in a different way because it's no longer standard of care. You're working into the future. You may work on something that will never come to market, but the knowledge that you gain is that we're going to find something better that will work in the future. And so it's an exciting field. It's a busy field. People just need training. And
So basically, I've seen a lot of job ads out there, and I know many of our viewers have too, and they say, you know, we're hiring a CRA, we're hiring a CRC, a coordinator, a clinical research associate, clinical research coordinator must have at least 2 years of experience. Okay, no one's born experience. Lauren, how do we get 2 years of experience? You can't start out with 2 years of experience. What's going on?
You certainly can't start out with 2 years of experience, but I think what a lot of those, a lot of the individuals who post those ads, I think what they really mean is someone who needs training. And like I said, I was just at this conference down in Florida speaking with a lot of sites on what problems they're encountering. And one of the biggest problems in one of the panels I spoke on was about optimizing hiring at clinical research sites. What can we do to make this better? Because everyone's looking around saying, how do we find someone who's experienced? And really one of the solutions we came up with is not someone who's finding someone who has 2 years of experience. It's finding someone who is trained in research. And just because you have a year of experience at, you know, Dr. Bob's research facility doesn't mean you're able to translate that directly to somewhere else. But if you have a really strong fundamental baseline knowledge of clinical research, and you have the hands-on practical training and how to maintain a reg binder, on how to document according to Alcoa C, on how to really implement 21 CFR 11, then you're going to be able to move into this field and really find success.
All right, so on that note, I want to ask the audience again, get everyone back involved. What is your #1 reason for being interested in or wanting to work in clinical research? So I just, I sent out a poll. Let's see if you can answer that quickly. Looks like, oh wow, we've had more people join us since we started. Okay. So that's exciting news. And people are answering the poll right now. And some of these answers are, I want to advance medicine, I want to help others, make more money. A few of you, I want to be a professional where I'm learning. Wow, we're just gonna let you all finish up the poll. It looks like we have about 60% of you all who have filled it out. And let's see if we can get a little higher number. Anyone else gonna share? And I'm gonna share these results with you. And you can you see this on your screen? It looks like most people are here because they want to advance medicine. And that's a beautiful thing. And that's really what we're doing in this field. We are developing new therapies, new technologies, new cancer treatments new ways of advancing medicine. I'm going to tell you a really quick story. One of my instructors down in Dallas, Texas is working on a therapy for people with severe osteoarthritis who need knee replacement surgery because their cartilage is so damaged. And now they have a treatment that's one injection into the knee. And instead of a knee replacement surgery, which is painful, can take 6 months to recover from, costs $100,000 with all the physical therapy, with all the treatment and the surgery and drugs you need, one injection is allowing these patients to rebuild their cartilage. Now, this is in phase 3, this particular treatment, but these are the types of treatments that are advancing and changing medicine. And it's just a phenomenal, it's just amazing what's happening in this field. So let's go on. We have one more topic we wanted to touch on really quickly, and that is, what are the opportunities available? Jeannie, where are people going to be working in the field? We've touched on some of the roles. What are some of the other roles?
So at the site level, you'll see someone like a site director or a site manager. Those are pretty typical for people who want to stay connected with those patients, but maybe manage a team of the research staff. Research assistant is a good entry-level position at the site level as well. Business development can be seen at the site. Business development can be seen at the sponsor or the CRO level. And those are the people who are sponsoring the trial, and they kind of oversee the entire trial at all the different sites. So that's on the site side, and then I'm going to kind of speak to the other side who are initiating the trial. So you might have a clinical scientist who wrote the protocol. You might have a medical monitor who's the physician overseeing mostly the safety. You might have like a database person or data manager, data coordinators, and they will make sure that this data makes sense, it's logical. They are the ones who issue these queries to make sure that the data is clean. There's a lot of quality. I kind of mentioned that earlier. Quality is pretty important at both levels, at the site and at the pharmaceutical level. I really like that the sky's the limit. That's why this poster is really helpful, because if you want to kind of take a break from patients and maybe you're more interested in the data, you can go that direction. If you want to stay at the site level, you can just kind of climb up. I myself have had the consultant role, and I found that to be really rewarding because I could see a lot of different trials at different sites in different therapeutic areas in different patient populations. So even though I might have been in pediatrics, in endocrinology, I saw how that one same trial was executed in 7 different locations around the US. So there's a lot of growth laterally and longitudinally. I think that the sky's the limit, and that's why that poster is so great.
Wow. And then, Lauren, do you want to talk a little bit about what people can do? And we said so many people want to get into this to advance medicine. Is that really what's happening?
Yeah, that's really what's happening. I mean, you're working, we've said it several times tonight, you are working in the future of medicine. You're working on cutting edge treatments, what's to come next. I mean, everything that is FDA approved today has been in trials at some point, has had that role of the clinical research coordinator who works at the site level, who works with patients. And I know you're thinking maybe that, oh, is it that fast pace, like when you go see your doctor and someone's in and out and you're not being protected or getting that quality time. And research is very different. I remember doing participant visits, and sometimes I would be with a participant for 4 hours, for 6 hours. Maybe I'd spend a whole day with them because that's what the protocol called for. This is a field where you really are connected with your participants, where you're getting to spend that time with them because you need to. You need to have their trust, so they tell you everything that's happening with them during this trial. So it's a really beautiful way to kind of work in science and what's to come next. And, for a lot of us, we're really analytical in this field, but a lot of us are also people persons. And so this is a really beautiful blend of those two avenues, because oftentimes science and that outward affinity doesn't really blend together. So it's a great way to mix that, especially if you're interested in being in a healthcare setting, but you're collecting that data. A lot of people then will go on to advance in their career, maybe become a clinical research associate. I'd say that's the most common stepping stone from the CRC position. That position is really concerned with data quality and integrity. These are people who are coming in and monitoring the data. They're making sure we're collecting it according to protocol. according to ICH-GCP 6R2, according to 21 CFR 50, according to all of these regulations that we have to follow. So, and beyond that, like Jeannie said, there's a lot of ways to evolve in this field. And it really just depends on each individual person and where their interest lies. And do you want to be in data? Do you want to stick with the patients? Do you want to be involved in regulation? So there's a lot of ways to go. And of course, as you advance through the field, you're rewarded financially as well too. You know, it's a field where there's a lot of upward growth, where you can grow both professionally and financially.
Wow, excellent. And then on that note, we actually do have a lot of questions from people. There's some questions coming in on the chat as well as on the Q&A. So if you do have questions, please feel to type them in. The first question is coming from Aminata, which is, how do people without experience get trained? And that is a great question. And that is actually why we exist. Because I'll take that one. It was so hard for people to get in the industry, but at the same time, the industry is having so much trouble finding the right people. And that's why we created our program, Clinical Research Fastrack. So instead of having to go back to school for 2 years and get a master's in clinical research, and then after 2 years, trying to get in the industry, we offer a boot camp training program. It can be completed in just 4 weeks. It's an intensive training that includes classroom training with industry experts as your instructors, not just Jeannie and Lauren, but you have about 14 different instructors all working in the field. And then we have a 2-week internship where you're at a clinical trial site observing firsthand clinical trials that are going on, so you get that experience. And there's some online components as well. So great question, and thank you for that question. This question is it difficult to get an entry-level position if you don't have a bachelor's in life sciences? And Lauren, why don't you take that? Because do all of our students have bachelor's in the life sciences?
No, we see a lot of people with a lot of diverse backgrounds. One individual in particular quickly comes to mind. This woman, she was down in Texas. She had a successful career in marketing. And then she was a stay-at-home mom, which is a beautiful thing. And she acquired a lot of skills through even, just staying at home and raising her children. And she came and took our program. And she said, I remember the first day of class, she was very nervous because she said, I've been home, with my family for so many years. And before that I was in marketing, but I've always wanted to be in healthcare. I've dabbled in IT. Is that helpful? Like, well, all skills are helpful. But with our training, she was really able to get the skills she needs to be in clinical research. Working in clinical research is really a lot of a trade, because there's a lot of very specific skills that you need to get to be successful in this field. And you can acquire them, but you have to be trained in them, right? So this particular woman, she completed our program. She's a rock star in class, knocked it out of the park at her internship, and actually her internship site hired her. That doesn't happen for everyone, getting hired right out of internship, but for this particular student, it did. But we see a lot of students with a lot of diverse backgrounds.
Great. So we have a lot more questions coming in, so we're going to try to get through this really quickly. We just have a few more minutes. This is from Baharati. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. Jeannie, does this career require travel? And I know the answer is yes and no. Can you explain the difference?
Right, so it depends. So if you're working as a coordinator, there's a little bit of travel. There's this meeting called the investigator meeting. It's kind of a really great opportunity to spend a weekend with other sites who are running the same exact trial. It's a place to collaborate your knowledge and to best execute the trial. So it's a great way to network, to problem solve, and you also get to meet all the other team members on that clinical trial. Typically that's at the very beginning of a trial when you get started on a study. When you are a CRA, there's probably a lot more traveling involved. So depending on the company you work for, you could be traveling 50%, you could be traveling 100%. Your region might be coast to coast, your region might just be your hometown and you just travel in your car. So that one kind of really depends on what your region is and the company you work for. So I hope that answers that question for the travel.
Yeah, thank you, Jeannie. I think that was great. So some roles, you go to an office down the street and it's just like any other job. And other roles, there's a lot of travel. So depending on what your interests are, you could pick and choose. And that's a really exciting way to enter the industry in different levels. Here's another question. Is there a fee for your program? And the answer is yes. And do you have financing? And the answer is also yes. So what most students do for our program, just like any other program, whether you're going back for a 1-year certificate, a 2-year master's, luckily our program costs a lot less than a 2-year program. Those 2-year programs are usually about $30,000 or $40,000 a year for 2 years. Wow, that could be, you know, $60,000, $80,000. Our program is just $9,750. And with financing, what most students do is they get their loans and they're paying about $200 a month. So for $200 a month, they're able to move into this exciting career and get the rewards of advancing medicine, working with patients, and really doing something rewarding that we are all passionate about. Wow, we have so many other questions. I don't know if I can get to all of them. Let me see if I can take this one. People are asking about their backgrounds. You know, if I have this degree or that degree, there's a lot of different backgrounds that are welcome in this field. So I think whether you have a degree in pharmacy, in the health sciences, in biology, or even in marketing or business, we have people from all walks of life entering clinical research. What type of certification is given after completions? I'm going to take that one. Or Lauren, can you take that about the diploma, the training, and the value that we offer?
Yeah, absolutely. So in this field, to be a certified clinical research coordinator, you actually have to have about 2 years of experience working in the field before you're eligible to sit for that exam. So for our program, you get a certificate of completion that states that you have received 228 hours of clinical research training. In that, it states that you have your, it implies you have your training in ICH GCP 6R2 and FDA regulations and OCOS, all these acronyms we've been throwing out all night, all of the things that you actually need to be successful. When you, then move into your interviews and you're sitting there with someone who's interviewing you for the position, you're able to talk about all the experience you have in class, all of the hands-on experience you gained both in class, because we believe in practice before you play. Let's practice all these things before you actually transition them into the clinic. Let's practice consenting participants. Let's practice maintaining a regulatory binder. So you will get that certificate of completion stating that you've completed the 228 hours. Once you're working in the field in a couple years, then you would be eligible to sit for that certification exam.
Awesome. Thank you, Lauren. We have another question about the 75,000 positions reference. This is a great researcher and a great question. What are your sources of this data? I love that question. And what is the top position needed at this time? So the entry-level positions are really in demand. The research assistant, the clinical research coordinator positions, and the entry-level CRA positions. So those positions are a large percentage, and I don't have exact numbers, so I'm not gonna quote a statistic when we have so many researchers in the group. And then what are the sources? And we actually have multiple. We look on LinkedIn, Indeed, the different job sites, and what we've found is there's a lot of jobs that are unposted. So these are just the jobs that are posted on these sites, and that's where we come up with our numbers. But in reality, those numbers could be different. It might not be exact, and it's been moving all the time. But the one thing we know is there are many, many, many unfilled positions. And when we have a program and we have 20, 30 students that we're training, wow, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of jobs available for those students. So once you have the right training and experience, this is a great field to get into. Here's a question about internship. Lauren, the question is, during the internship, is the student responsible for living expenses? Where are these internships?
Yeah, that's awesome. So, we have our trainings that take place in the classroom in a few different locations around the country. And so you would have to travel for that if it's not taking place right there in your hometown. But the nice thing about the internship is you will go home to wherever you're from, and you will complete that internship somewhere close to home. We do that for a couple reasons. One, we want you to be interning somewhere in your community, where you're going to be able to network and build connections right there with researchers doing this great work right there in your hometown. Another reason is to avoid those living expenses, where hopefully, you know, you're able to just commute from your house down the road each day and go to that clinical trial site.
Wow. Wow. You know, we have so many great questions, and I don't think we can get to all of them tonight. We have one last question is, would it be possible to shadow people and get a hands-on look before starting the program? We do invite people into our classrooms to visit with us when class is going on, so you can actually meet with us in person. Of course, that you'd have to be in one of those cities where that training's going on. Lauren, you're gonna be in Philadelphia next week at a training, is that right? So for any of you near Philadelphia, please contact us. And here's our contact information on the screen. You can call us, email us, go on our website, request information. We would love to meet with you. And yes, you can meet with us in person. Jeannie, you're going to be teaching in Scottsdale, Arizona next week. And can people drop in and meet with you as well?
Absolutely. I have a whole team of advisors who can meet with you individually, so we can personalize your tour to kind of check out the facilities, get a good program guide, so it's kind of our catalog. Class will be running actually Saturday for 8 days, so if they want to stop by this upcoming week, it's a great time to see the instructors and to see the students. Not all the students are from Arizona. We have quite a few students flying in from all over, so come on in. I hope to see you there.
Great, and I want to thank all of you for attending this webinar, coming out on a Thursday night, taking time to be a part of this. I'm blown away at how many people have signed up and registered, but I know there's so much interest in getting into the field, and there's so many jobs available.